to public comment on agenda action item. We have one speaker this evening. I'd like to invite Mr. James Whitaker to come forward. Mr. Whitaker, I'd like to remind you that you have 3 minutes. You will hear the beep. You should start winding down your comments and conclude when you hear the final buzzer. The subject of Mr. Whitaker's remarks this evening pertain to approval and adoption of academic targets, and the action requested is to increase monitoring and development of programs.
Okay, thank you. If district officials do not utilize or start to utilize reading programs such as the Supplemental Educational Services program available to them, how can the superintendent request the board adopt a 2-year target to close the reading achievement gap? These are just empty words attached to empty promises. Although 3,823 or less parents faithfully registered their children for the No Child Left Behind SCS tutoring, to date, only 4 providers with 83 students have been approved to start. The question is why? PASS began asking this question December the 6th, 2011. After receiving the provider enrollment summary sheets. Ms. Gross, you said you were waiting for an answer from the superintendent about this. In our email to the board and Audit and Accountability Committee members today, we requested an answer at the board meeting tonight. All of you thought the parent information booklet was a great step. Yet, except Mr. Wiles and I think Ms. Cambine did not vote on it. Yet, in the 13,000 parental information booklets the SCS officials had printed, tutoring was estimated to begin between October the 12th, 2011 and November the 15th, 2011. The parents were required to register by September the 30th, 2011. Yet no tutoring almost 3 months later. As you can see from the NCLB SCS federal guidelines, which is attached to the email that I've already sent you today, tutoring was required to begin at the beginning of the year. So the question again is, why hasn't the tutoring started? I have 3 minutes, and I'm waiting on an answer. Ms. Gross, you can ask. Mr. Wiles, you can ask. I'm waiting on an answer.
Our policy dictates that we cannot answer your question at the table. The superintendent will get back to you at a later date.
You asked Ms. Joyce Hackett a whole bunch of questions when you're trying to get the book approved. I want to know why ain't there no tutoring. We already sent you an email earlier. Why isn't there any tutoring?
Madam Chair, as I understand it, this is an opportunity to provide public comment on agenda action items, and the subject of these remarks is supposed to be approval and adoption of academic targets. Or am I misreading this?
No, you are not. We gave you the opportunity, again, when you are making a presentation to the board, it needs to be applicable to the discussion, and that had to do with the consent agenda. You brought in a subject that wasn't relative to what we were discussing.
You got
And
to
as,
be kidding.
please, no.
You got to be kidding. If you think that adopting a
Mr. Whitaker, you're out of order. You're out of order. We thank you for taking the opportunity, and I'm going to ask you to please take your, yes, sir.
Board Member Baker is absolutely correct. He was to talk on the approval of adoption of the targets. However, we didn't have him speak prior to us voting on that. So, I mean, that was our fault. He should have spoke
Well,
prior.
again, and I acknowledge that, but again, it should be something that's relative to the subject at hand.
I concur.
So again, thank you for taking the time, Mr. Whitaker. Would you please take your seat?